It's time for our parenting and family corner. This is where we speak about the experiences of parenting and families on the continent. Bullying is a very pervasive issue and it affects a lot of people, children, adults, and families alike across the world. And parents might want to do everything in their power to protect their child from a bullying experience. But unfortunately, a lot of us have been bullied as children. And I don't think that children who are victims of bullying, nobody obviously wants their child to be bullied or anybody to be bullied, in fact. An issue that really affects adults so much. I mean, we've been speaking so much about online bullying that, even adults themselves can find themselves in a huge emotional state due to bullying online and even in person. Now, how much so for children who aren't emotionally developed, who are still young and quite fragile? As someone who was also bullied back in primary school, I know the effects of bullying when it comes to children. And many a times when we speak about bullying, we concentrate on the victims of bullying themselves. When we speak about children who are being bullied, we say, how can you tell if your child is being bullied in schools? What sort of behavioral changes and patterns do you have to look out for to tell that your child is being bullied? And then what steps do you need to take to both bring the bully to book, but also take care of your child's psychological health? But we forget that we're speaking about children who are growing, who are developing, and who are going through various other things as well in their own social and family lives. So we never really speak about the bullies themselves. Today we're navigating that other side of the conversation. How can you tell if your child is a bully? And what can you do to make sure that that behavior is changed at a young age? In the isiZulu language, they say, "Ligotshwa lisasemanzi." That means that you have to fix a child's behavior while they're still young so that they don't continue it into their adulthood. And today we're speaking about that, navigating as a parent or a guardian, the fact that your child is a bully, understanding and seeing that, but also fixing those bullying tendencies early on. We have on the line with us Lewis Karanja, who's a child psychologist, to help us unpack this. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us once again on The Move. It's a pleasure to have you.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Lewis, it's usually a very one-sided conversation, this conversation about bullying, because obviously being bullied as the victim is a worrying thing and can have great psychological impacts on children. But we hardly ever go into the conversation of the bully themselves, especially if we're speaking about a child. This is someone who is not mature yet and maybe doesn't understand the consequences of their actions. So let's speak a little bit about that. How can you tell that your child is a bully?
All right. So I'm going to categorize into different levels so that we can be able to know what to look out for. So one thing is in terms of their behavior, because it's when you're a parent, when you're a teacher, it's very easy for you to identify whenever a child is doing wrong or whenever their behavior has changed. So that child who is a bully will be aggressive towards their other, especially to their peers, their siblings back at home, and even adults. So you'll find them using a lot of physical force, the teasing. Most of the time they'll have the frequent conflicts in school and also back at home, now depending with the environment that the child is in. Then the other thing which is really, really important is the dominating behavior. So they insist on getting their way. Whenever they want something, they have that dominating behavior. So that's very important to look at. Then they tend to blame others for their own mistakes. So if they have done something, they blame it on someone. So if it is in a school setting, at home, they blame their siblings. Then moving forward to how they socialize with their peers and also their siblings, they have that control. So whenever they're interacting, they always want to take charge. They want other people to fear them rather than that respect. There is respect now whenever you're interacting with a child is interacting with their peers. There is that particular respect. Now for them, they want to gain that control and for the other peers to fear them.
Yeah.
Then they enjoy when others get upset. So whenever they have done something, it is like something that usually fuels them. Whenever someone gets upset or they get scared, or whenever they do something and someone is hurt, they really thrive. So they are really happy.
You know, Lewis, do you think that parents and caregivers get a lot of slack on their children's behaviors? Usually, when we see a child who misbehaves and does things that, aren't socially acceptable, we immediately want
Mhm.
to jump and blame their parents. I'm sure their parents taught them this behavior. Are those two connected? Are the parents or the caregivers the ones that teach children these behaviors? I'm sure there is, in a family dynamic, if that child has siblings, not all of those siblings are going to be bullies. So essentially, are the children learning this bullying behavior from the caregivers, or are children just different? Do children just become bullies out of nowhere?
Okay, I think I agree with you. Parents also play a part in regards to now the child who is the bully, because children imitate whatever they are seeing. So whatever they are seeing at home, whatever they have watched, you see, even parents are not, they are not really keen to look at whatever their children are watching. So they can be watching something which is violent, something which is promoting bullying. And even in their home surrounding, in the neighborhood, you find that there are other children who are teaching these particular children and their friends about now how to bully and to instill fear in other children. So I can say also parents play a part, because we tend to leave children to play on their own. We don't ask for feedback. How was your play? Did you have any difficulty? So we tend to just let them be. And that's how now the behavior continues.
Mm. So, when we think about bullying in particular, like I said before, we usually concentrate on the children who are victims of bullying. But should we be seeing children who are bullies as victims as well, simply because they are children and, there's a lot of learning and fixed behavior that they still need to go through?
Mhm.
So, should we be recognizing children who are bullies as victims as well?
Yes, we should recognize also children who are bullied as victim, because we need to go back and try and investigate or get to know how did the child get there? Why do they want to instill fear? Why do they want to hurt others? So it means that there's something that really happened for them to behave the way they behaved, because this is a learned behavior.
Yeah.
It is not something that they had before.
Okay, Lewis, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We're chatting to child psychologist Lewis Karanja about navigating your child being the bully and how to fix those bullying tendencies early on. We still have our On the Move poll going on our X handle at Channel Africa 1. So join us there. We are asking you that question on our poll today. What do you do when if you find out that your child is a bully? What are the actions that you would take? Join those options on our X handle. Are you going to talk and listen? Are you going to set boundaries? Are you going to seek help or model respectful behavior? It's 11:20 Central Africa time.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really, really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Keeping you on the know and on the move.
It's a very interesting conversation. We're taking a look at another side of bullying with children in particular in today's parenting and family corner. We're speaking about discovering that your child is a bully and bullying others, whether at school, in the playground, at home, wherever. But if your child is a bully, how do you fix that behavior early on? We're having this conversation with child psychologist Lewis Karanja. I just got a very interesting question here, Lewis. Someone is asking, would publicly humiliating that child who is a bully in that same environment where they bully others stop that behavior? And essentially, I mean, they say maybe if at school they tell you and they call you and they say, hey, your child is a bully at school. As a parent, you go there and you maybe shout at them, or you maybe even give them a hiding, or whatever actions that you take in front of other learners. They feel embarrassed and then they stop doing that. Is that a solution?
No, it is not a solution, because now by publicly humiliating them, you are lowering their self-esteem. Now what you'll be doing is now more damage as to doing good, because now they'll now start contemplating about their bad behavior. They'll now start having negative thoughts now towards their bad behavior. So it wouldn't be a good approach, because now they'll continue. Now that will be a way of fueling their bullying now traits. So if they had, so probably if they were starting off and you have publicly humiliated them, they'll now continue with the same behavior.
I see.
Just now to prove you wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad that question was actually asked, because it brings in, the difference between changing behavior and molding behavior. So the difference between changing and redirection, right? Because it's one thing to make sure that that child doesn't bully others anymore, and that can be changed. But how do you mold your child to think differently about their behavior and mold their behavior going forward? So not that they don't just bully that one child, but they change their behavior and see why it's wrong. How can you do that, right? Can you explain to us that difference? The difference between, as a parent, taking actions in step from changing the behavior that they are, so bullying that particular child that they've been bullying, versus making sure that they have changed behavior throughout their life and you've molded them into a different path.
Okay. Now, changing a behavior, it means that you are telling this child never to do something bad or wrong. And for children, one way or another, they'll find themselves doing something wrong and they don't know. So that is quite impossible. Now, molding a behavior is very good, because now you will be now telling them that it is one way of correcting. Whenever they do something wrong, they're supposed to do this alternatively. And now taking small steps before the child gets to have a good behavior, because now changing means that they will never have to do the bullying or a bad behavior in their life. So molding will be a great step for parents, because now you'll be taking baby steps. So whenever they do something wrong, you correct them and tell them that this is the right way.
So how do you do that? How do you mold that behavior, especially if you're a parent who doesn't agree with that kind of behavior? And, like we said earlier, it doesn't really mean that, all parents and all guardians who have children who are bullies are also modeling, bad behavior for their children. Maybe they have other children who don't do that. So one would argue, why would that one child be a bully and the others aren't? Does that mean the parents are good or bad? What is the first step that you can take as a parent once you learn that your child does bully others, and how do you mold their behavior from that point?
All right. So the first thing is having to communicate with the child, so that you can talk with the child calmly and asking them why they behave this way. Why do they think? Do they think if it affects the other children, the other peers, so that you can be able to know what is happening. Then, in terms of communication, it needs to be someone who is really calm, someone who is really close with the child, because we tend now, in terms of communication, we tend to use harsh words, giving them threats so that they can be able to tell you, now you're supposed to have that empathy, show them kindness so that they can be able to tell you whatever is happening. Then setting clear rules and also consequences. So you need to tell them whenever you hurt someone, whenever you humiliate someone, whenever you do this, whenever you bully someone in school or here at home, there are consequences. And also now for them to understand. So you also need to be consistent in terms of the rules and the consequences that you give the child so that they can understand when I do something wrong, there is a punishment to it. And when I
Yeah.
do something good, there is a reward so that they can be able to understand that particular dynamic.
Yeah.
Then encouraging them to have like a positive activity that they can do, because most of the bullies, they have a lot of aggression, a lot of anger, so they can engage like in a sport like being an athlete, running, painting, or a hobby that they are comfortable doing, so that they can be able to redirect that particular anger to that sport. Then teaching your child problem solving skills, like at home, whenever you quarrel with that child or whenever they are dissatisfied with your decision, whenever you are at home with them, you now need to teach them how are you supposed to resolve conflict rather than fighting
Yeah.
or shouting at someone, so that they can be able to understand how the world works. Because for them, they know, a bully now knows whenever they don't get something, they really need to get aggressive, they need to get their way. So you also need to teach them that that should not happen.
You know, let's speak a little bit as we wrap up about that model behavior. What sort of introspections should parents and caregivers have when their child are bullying? Because maybe there is some learnt behavior that they are modeling that isn't quite positive. Is that necessary introspection from the parent or caregiver side, or even the family at large? Because it might not be just the direct parents. Maybe it's the aunt, the uncle, the cousin, somebody else in that dynamic. Is there introspection necessary?
Yes, it's really important so that even the parents themselves can understand whatever is happening, so that, because also the child is looking at the parent, because you see the child is the bully, and whenever they are called to school, the child is very keen to see how will my parent behave, what will happen. So it's really important also for the parents to introspect so that they can be able now to take the right action in terms of now handling that particular child going forward.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Lewis. We've run out of time. And thank you for helping us unpack this conversation this morning.
You're welcome.
That's child psychologist Lewis Karanja speaking about ways to navigate your child being a bully and fixing those bullying tendencies early on.